Shemoth, chapter 14. And Jehovah spoke to Moshe, saying, Speak to the children of Israel, that they turn and camp before Pi Hahiroth, between Migdal and the sea opposite Baal Zephon. Camp before it by the sea. For Pharaoh shall say to the children of Israel, They are entangled in the land, the wilderness has closed them in. And I shall strengthen the heart of Pharaoh, and he shall pursue them. But I am to be esteemed through Pharaoh and all his army, and the Mitzrites shall know that I am Jehovah. And they did so. And it was reported to the sovereign of Mitzrayim that the people had fled, and the heart of Pharaoh and his servants was turned against the people. And they said, Why have we done this, that we have let Israel go from serving us? So he made his chariot ready and took his people with him, and he took 600 choice chariots, and all the chariots of Mitzrayim with officers over all of them. And Jehovah strengthened the heart of Pharaoh, sovereign of Mitzrayim, and he pursued the children of Israel, but the children of Israel went out defiantly. And the Mitzrites pursued them, and all the horses and chariots of Pharaoh, and his horsemen and his army, and overtook them, camping by the sea beside Pi Hahiroth, before Baal Zephon. And when Pharaoh drew near, the children of Israel lifted their eyes and saw the Mitzrites coming up from them. And they were greatly afraid, so the children of Israel cried out to Jehovah. And they said to Moshe, Did you take us away to die in the wilderness, because there are no burial sites in Mitzrayim? What is this you have done to us, to bring us out of Mitzrayim? Is this not the word that we spoke to you in Mitzrayim, saying, Leave us alone and let us serve the Mitzrites? For it would have been better for us to serve the Mitzrites than to die here in the wilderness. And Moshe said to the people, Do not be afraid. Stand still and see the deliverance of Jehovah, which he has done for you, which he does for you today. For the Mitzrites, whom you see today, you are never again to see. Jehovah does fight your battle for you, and you keep silent. And Jehovah said to Moshe, Why do you cry to me? Speak to the children of Israel, and let them go forward. And you lift up your rod and stretch out your hand over the sea and divide it, and let the children of Israel go on dry ground, but through the midst of the sea. And I am strengthening the hearts of the Mitzrites, and they shall follow them. And I am to be esteemed through Pharaoh, and over all his army, his chariots, and his horsemen. And the Mitzrites shall know that I am Jehovah, when I am esteemed through Pharaoh, his chariots, and his horsemen. And the messenger of Elohim, who went before the camp of Israel, moved and went behind them, and came between the camp of the Mitzrites and the camp of Israel. And it was the cloud and the darkness, and it gave light by night, and the one did not come near the other all the night. And Moshe stretched out his hand over the sea, and Jehovah caused the sea to go back by a strong cast wind all that night, and made the sea into dry land, and the waters were divided. And the children of Israel went into the midst of the sea on dry ground, and the waters were a wall to them, and on their right and on their left. And the Mitzrites pursued and went after them into the midst of the sea, all the horses of Pharaoh, his chariots and horsemen. And it came to be in the morning watch that Jehovah looked down upon the army of the Mitzrites through the column of fire and cloud, and he brought the army of the Mitzrites into confusion. And he took off their chariot wheels, so that they drove them with difficulty. And the Mitzrites said, Let us flee from the face of Israel, for Jehovah fights for them against the Mitzrites. Then Jehovah said to Moshe, Stretch out your hand over the sea, and let the waters come back upon the Mitzrites, on their chariots, and on their horsemen. And Moshe stretched out his hand over the sea, and the sea returned to its usual flow at the break of day, with the Mitzrites fleeing into it, and thus Jehovah overthrew the Mitzrites in the midst of the sea, and the waters returned and covered the chariots and the horsemen and all the army of Pharaoh that came into the sea after them, and not even one was left of them. And the children of Israel walked on dry ground in the midst of the sea, and the waters were a wall to them on their right and on their left. Thus Jehovah saved Israel that day out of the hand of the Mitzrites of Israel, saw the Mitzrites dead on the seashore. And Israel saw the great work which Jehovah had done in Mitzrayim, and the people feared Jehovah and believed Jehovah and his servant Moshe.